Have you noticed this lately? You go to Google for a simple answer, and you feel like you're fighting with it. Yeah, you're not going crazy. What used to be this incredibly simple, fast, and efficient tool has become, well, let's be honest, kind of a mess. So let's dive into this and figure out why our go-to search engine feels so broken.
And that really is the central question, isn't it? You type something in, and instead of that clean list of blue links we're all used to, you get hit with this wall of stuff. It just feels cluttered and unhelpful, like you're having to wade through all this digital noise just to find that one clear signal you were looking for.
I mean, just look at this. It's a perfect example. Someone searched for the closest Walmart, and this is the actual AI overview they got. It's a completely useless, circular answer that tells them to do the exact thing they just did. This isn't just some tiny glitch. It's a huge symptom of a much, much bigger problem.
All right, so let's break down what's actually happening on the search page itself. The whole thing really centers on what Google calls the Search Generative Experience, or SGE. You and I know it as that giant AI summary box at the top of the page that nobody really asked for.
And this chart really visualizes the new reality perfectly. A massive chunk of your screen, we're talking the entire first scroll often, is now taken up by that AI summary, and then a huge block of sponsored ads. The actual organic search results, the reason you searched in the first place, they're buried at the bottom, making up just a tiny quarter of that prime real estate.
So, beyond just being unhelpful, these AI overviews can be, well, dangerously wrong. And this is a real example. The AI confidently presented this harmful, completely nonsensical advice as if it were a fact. And this isn't some rare, isolated incident. It's a direct result of how this AI actually works.
You have to remember, this AI is just a large language model, an LLM. It isn't thinking or checking facts. It's just predicting the next most likely word based on all the stuff it was trained on. And that includes a ton of unfiltered content from places like Reddit. A person can tell the difference between a joke and serious medical advice. An LLM? Not so much.
So the big question is, why would Google risk damaging its most important product like this? Well, it turns out the company was caught between two massive pressures, one coming from the inside and another very different one coming from the outside.
This definitely didn't happen overnight. Back in the day, Google's whole promise was a clean, simple, user-focused experience. But fast forward a couple of decades, and even its own top executives, like the former head of search, were starting to sound the alarm internally. He was worried the company was getting way too obsessed with making money.
That internal pressure really boiled over in 2019. A code yellow, like a panic alert, was declared just because the company was afraid it might not meet its ever-increasing revenue targets. And when a company that big starts to panic about infinite growth, well, the user experience is usually the first casualty.
Okay, so the relentless pressure for more money, that explains all the ads. But it doesn't explain the sudden, almost chaotic rush to cram AI into everything. For that, we have to look outside the company, at the competition.
And then the earthquake. ChatGPT showed up and just completely changed the game. Suddenly, users had this new conversational way to get answers summarized for them without having to click through a dozen blue links. For a company that had a 90% monopoly on search for decades, this was nothing short of an existential threat. And look, this wasn't just some hypothetical threat. The data showed it was very, very real. Just consider this. More than half of consumers were already using AI for research, and almost half were using it for product recommendations. These are the core jobs of Google Search, and they were getting eaten away fast.
This number is it's staggering. A 1,200% explosion in traffic from generative AI in just a few months. All of a sudden, Google wasn't leading the innovation anymore. They were scrambling to catch up. They were panicking, and they had to get their own AI into search, and they had to do it fast.
But this panicked reaction has had some pretty devastating consequences. And not just for us, the users. It's doing real damage to the entire ecosystem of publishers and businesses, the very fabric of the internet that depends on Google for its traffic.
It makes sense, right? Why would you click a link if the AI summary has already scraped the answer for you? Well, for the web pages that actually create the content that gets featured, the result is this. An average traffic drop of over 1/3. That's a massive blow to businesses and creators. And for some companies, the impact was absolutely catastrophic. Take Chegg, a popular site that helps students. They saw their stock value just plummet by 90%. Their CEO came out and publicly blamed Google's AI for basically stealing their content to keep users on Google's page instead of sending them to the source.
And that stock collapse wasn't just a number on a screen. It translated into immediate, real-world losses. Over $6 million lost in a single quarter. This is the tangible financial damage that's being done when your entire business model built on getting traffic suddenly has that traffic cut off at the source. So it's really no surprise that the response has been a tidal wave of lawsuits. We're seeing everyone from major media corporations that own Rolling Stone to publisher alliances in the EU fighting back. They're all arguing that Google is destroying their businesses by summarizing their hard work without any compensation.
And all of this has pushed Google into a corner, a trap that really they built for themselves. It's a paradox where pretty much every move they make seems to make things worse, for them, for their users, and for the internet as a whole.
This chart right here explains everything. Over 3/4 of Google's massive revenue, and we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars, comes from advertising. And a huge chunk of that is tied directly to people clicking on ads and links in the search results.
And that brings us to the central trap. To fight off the threat from ChatGPT, they have to push AI summaries. But those exact same summaries are teaching users not to click on the very ads and links that form the foundation of their entire business. They are actively sabotaging their own revenue stream. It's wild. And for the first time, well, ever, we're starting to see real cracks in the armor. Google's market share, which has been untouchable for decades, is actually going down. People are actively fleeing to competitors like DuckDuckGo for a cleaner, simpler experience. I mean, think about that. Bing is starting to look appealing. That's how you know things have gotten bad.
It's just such a stark contrast to where they started. This was their original mission statement, their North Star as a company. The idea was so simple. Just make the user happy and all the success will follow. It feels like somewhere along the way, that guiding principle got completely lost.
Which leaves us all with the big, final question. Trapped between angry shareholders, new competition, and a frustrated user base, can the company whose name literally means to search remember how to build a search engine that people actually want to use again?